A quadratic expression is an expression where the highest power is a 2. So for example, 3x squared plus 9x plus 5 is a quadratic because our highest power is 2, and that can be found in x squared. Another example of a quadratic could be 10x squared plus 5. Although this does not include a term with x in it, it still has the highest power of 2. So we still call this a quadratic. In general, we can say that we want an expression in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are all constants. And by constants, what I mean is that they are just some form of number. When a question asks you to factorize, it's asking you to put in brackets by taking out the highest common factor. And a factor is just a number that can go into the expression without leaving any remainders. Factorizing is the opposite of expanding. In this first example, we're going to factorize x squared plus 7x plus 10. To do this, we need to find two numbers that add to give us 7 and two numbers that multiply to give us 10. In this case, those two numbers are 5 and 2, because 5 plus 2 gives us 7 and 5 plus 2 gives us 10. Once you've found those two numbers, you have to create your brackets. Now, because we are dealing with x squared plus 7x, both of our brackets will start off with x. Now, our first number that we found was 5. So we're going to have x plus 5 because that 5 is positive. And our second number was 2. So we're going to have x plus 2 because that was also positive. And this is our final answer. We can do a check to see if this is correct. And our check would involve expanding these brackets. Now you can use FOIL or FACE to help you expand these brackets. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 5 times x is 5x. And then 5 times 2 is 10. And if I add 5x and 2x together, then I'll get 7x. So this will become x squared plus 7x plus 10, which is the question we had at the start. So we can see that yes, this answer was correct. It is really important you make it very clear what your actual answer is, because this at the bottom is just a check. In our second example, we have a squared plus 7a plus 6. Again, we're looking for two numbers that add to give us 7, but this time we're looking for two numbers that will multiply to give us 6. In this case, the two numbers we're looking for are 6 and 1, and again, they are both positive. So when we are creating our solution, this time we will start with a, because our expression is in terms of a. And our first bracket will include the 6, so plus 6, and then we have a plus 1. Now, it doesn't actually matter which way round you write this answer, so you could actually write a plus 1 and then a plus 6. It will mean the same thing. And the same goes for the previous example. We could have written x plus 2 and then x plus 5. Let us now do our check. So let's expand this bracket. So we have a plus 1 and a plus 6. And I'm going to do a multiplied by a is a squared. A multiplied by 6 is 6a. 1 times a is just a. And 1 times 6 is just 6. Again, I can bring together these two terms in the middle. I know 6a plus a is 7a, leaving me with the question that I had to begin with. Again, make sure that your answer is really clear, and I'm just going to do that by highlighting it. Either of these answers would have been fine. In this third example, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite my question so that my square is at the front. So I'm going to write y squared plus 8y plus 16 instead. And I can do that because this 8y is positive. If it was a minus 8y, I would have to change that to y squared minus 8y plus 16. And the reason I'm putting it in this form is because it's easier for me to see where my numbers are coming from. From here, I can set up my equation. This time, I'm going to want two numbers that I can add together to give me 8, and two numbers that I can times together to give me 16. In this case, those two numbers are 4 and 4. It's always easier to fill in the second row before you fill in the first row. Once we have our numbers, we have to make our brackets. So this time, my equation is in terms of y, so I'm going to use y, and I have y plus 4, and then again, y plus 4. Another way we can write this is y plus 4 squared, because there are two sets of y plus 4. We are now going to check if this is correct by expanding these brackets. So write out the answer that you got, and then we're going to do y multiplied by y, which is y squared, y multiplied by 4, which is 4y, again 4 times y is 4y, and then 4 times 4, which is 16. And when we add 4y and 4y, we get y squared plus 8y plus 16, which is what we started with. Again, be sure to highlight your final answer. Either of these two answers are fine. A few things to remember when you're working through questions like these. When you're trying to find your number that multiplies to give you what you want, so let's just call that a, don't forget that 1 and that number are also a possibility, like in example 2. My second hint to you is to always check your answer, because expanding is often easier than factorising, so it's a good way to check whether your work is correct. Don't forget to use the correct letter. Sometimes we're so used to using X that we end up using it by mistake. If you need to rewrite your question, like in example 3, make sure you do so. And when you're trying to find your pairs, make sure each of your row has the same pair. So for example 1, we can see that we've used 5 and 2 to give us 7. We then have to use 5 and 2 to give us 10. We can't use different numbers. These pairs have to be the same. It's always your middle number that you use for your addition, and it's always your last number that you use for your multiplication. So if you need to make a note for that, you can just write middle for addition and last for multiplication. Or as you're working through your work, what I do is I just put a little addition above my middle number and a little multiplication above my last number. And I'm just going to do that for all of these examples to show you how it makes